Good evening and welcome to this special discussion on the topic of women and financial freedom. The nation is celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, and we at SDFC Mutual Fund are doing our bit to reach out as many women as possible to spread the message of financial freedom through investing. I'm sure you would have heard about our Barni Se Azadi campaign that we launched exactly a year back as part of our investor education initiative for empowering women investors. It's a cause we really believe in and want each and every woman to be financially aware and independent. During the last year, we have conducted several investor awareness programs across the country for women investors, in addition to mass media outreach. Continuing this journey forward, we have a special guest today, Rupa Venkat Krishnan, to talk on this topic of women and financial freedom. Rupa is an industry veteran and authority on the subject. I'm sure you will benefit immensely from her experience as dealing with lots of the issues and challenges that women faces in their journey towards financial freedom. My colleague Amit Grover will be hosting the session and will facilitate the interaction. I hope you have a wonderful session with Rupa and Amit and you make the most of it. Once again, many congratulations for Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. May you have a financial freedom. May you have a great time ahead.
Thank you, Navneet sir, and welcome Rupa ma'am. Super excited to talk to you and learn from your 2 decades of wealth creation and managing emotions and money for your clients and investors. It's said that money is a very emotional subject and you are managing it so well for all your clients. But I'm sure even you must have seen it many times that majority of the investment decisions, unfortunately, are being taken by men. And whatever little bit women investors are investing, they're taking advice either they're from their husband or brother or their son or their father. My basic question, which I want to ask, is money only for men, or ideally women should take charge for their money and they should start taking control of their money? What do you think about it, ma'am?
So thank you so much, Amit, and thank you, Navneet, for those wonderful introduction, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. So I think money is a human need, correct? Irrespective of gender. So I fail to understand why are we gender biased about money. But money is something which is very, very essential for any human being who's born on this planet. And money becomes an essence of security. And women want security for themselves, for their family, for their children. I think they are innate. There is a strength in them to say that they want that financial security from the day one, even when they start earning or when they get married. I think that security is always there. So money becomes a very essential part. And why I personally feel that women understand money for the reason because for decades and for centuries and centuries, the household expenses are managed by women. And the inflation is something, so we all talk about inflation, investments because of inflation, but the women understand inflation better than the men because they are last one to hit with inflation because through the milk prices and the vegetable prices, till the time it comes in the newspaper. It is a daily affair which they realize it. So I think and women manage money very well. They've been managing households. Our grandmothers and our mothers have managed the households very well. I remember, I can just give you an example saying that a limited amount of money is given every month to manage homes. Is it calculated how many guests have come in between that period? How many people come and eat? Nothing is calculated, but everything is managed between that money which is given. And so they are the best money managers.
Absolutely, ma'am. And thanks for giving confidence to all the listeners, because the myth which is there that money is for men is honestly wrong. Men and women, God has given equal powers to both of them. And I'm sure more power to women in terms of the efforts and the way they've been managing money till now. Absolutely. Let's start with a very basic thing. Okay. A lot of people think that, investments, money, and all this is so complicated. Can you just simplify for our listeners that what is asset allocation or what is goal-based planning? How do you start your investment journey in very simple terms?
So, Amit, it's so simple because, first of all, why we complicate money is because there is a taboo in the society. We never talk about money because the first thing when we talk about money is we always feel saying that you need large sums of money to save large sums of investments and make long term wealth. I don't think that myth has to be, it should be back burner because even small sums of money can create large sums of wealth. And I think the mutual fund industry in the last 20 years 28 years in the last history has created that kind of compounding wealth for people. It's an industry where even a 500 rupees or 100 rupees person can invest and a person who has crores of rupees can invest. It's a beautiful vehicle, right? So the myth is all about saying that why you should not. So people have a taboo to talk about money. And I think that taboo should be thrown away and say that we should start talking about money and say that how important is that. Amit, that's very interesting saying that whenever people move from one city to another, from one locality to another, the only thing that everybody talks about and looks around, especially women, is do you have a school near? Do you have a provision store? Do you have a bank, a medical store, hospital? These are all things that we all look at. I have never seen anybody look at and say that, oh, do I have anybody who can help me financially to see that I can invest and create wealth? I think that's not there at all in our list. So the bucket list has to change.
Right.
I think we are in a place where the bucket list has to change. To that extent, I have known people who say that, "Acha, baaju mein tailor hai kya?" So, in spite of the fact that we go to that but कोई अपना पैसे के बारे में सोचता नहीं है. So it's high time that we all start talking about money and leave the inhibition saying that कि बहुत पैसे होने चाहिए पैसे बात करने के लिए. बिल्कुल नहीं. अगर आपके पास 1000 रुपए भी हो तो 1000 रुपए भी काफी होता है छोटा छोटा इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए.
Absolutely. Perfectly fine. And you rightly said money should not be a taboo topic. It should be somebody where husband, wife, also involves children. It should be a topic which should be a daily conversation between families. That's perfectly right, ma'am. Talking about mutual funds, and I think earlier it was like a very complicated topic, mutual funds, but thanks to the awareness, today a lot of people across the country know about mutual funds. But there is still a lot of myths about mutual funds. At one side, we see a lot of advertisements which says mutual funds sahi hai and everything about mutual funds. But at the same time, there are disclaimers when you listen that mutual funds are subjected to market risk. And so there is mind oscillates between them. Sahi hai ya mutual fund risky hai? And people are confused. Should we invest? Can you explain for our listeners basically what is mutual funds and how this investment vehicle can help them solve their life problems?
So, Amit, a very interesting question because I think a lot of people look at the advertisement and don't look at the positive side of that advertisement. That what is that advertisement actually talking about? It talks about saying that how you can create wealth over a long periods of time, right? It talks about saying that an SIP, which talks about saying that you can invest small amounts to create large sums of wealth for yourself. And the vehicle also talks about you can invest 100 rupees to crores of rupees into that vehicle, right? Look at the content that the advertisement contains, correct? But what are we looking at? We're looking at the small portion and say that, oh, there is subject to market risk, right? वो human mindset ऐसा है कि positive को नहीं देखते, negatives को देखते हैं. And we just don't go and check saying that कि, is it right? That what is this caveat means? What does that risk means? We don't even take efforts to understand it, correct? Now look at it. If you look at a lot of advertisements, food products, there are a lot of food packaging that comes in which says how many calories, do we stop eating? No, correct. We read it for awareness and we still eat, right? Every one of us knows saying that having French fries and burgers and all and fast food is not good for us. Do we stop eating? No. In the same way, what does that caveat just says that be careful, be aware that in the short term there could be volatility and long term there won't be volatility over a period of time, but please understand, go and check and understand what that exactly means. Just because reading and you're shying away and finding a reason not to invest is not going to help you. You have to get to understand what that particular caveat means. It also, and please look at the content of the advertisement, which is so positive. And I think the mutual fund vehicle gives everyone on this planet an opportunity to invest. And you have so many options available. It could be debt, it could be equity, it could be liquid. There's so many options. I think it's such a beautiful vehicle for people to manage their money, to create wealth for themselves, to get in that financial security for themselves. And it's absolutely a wonderful, wonderful vehicle.
Yes, yes. And you rightly said mutual funds means equity mutual funds also, fixed income mutual funds also, and also gold and silver, which is also commodity driven. So basically, it gives you, empowers you to invest in all asset classes. And the beauty is that there is no differentiation, whether if somebody is putting 500 rupees or 5 crores, the treatment to all of them are same. So nicely put, ma'am. Ma'am, the idea is people also get confused between the idea of saving and investing, because a lot of people think that, you know what, it's generally said that Indians are very good in saving. We are good savers. But what is, and people also believe that saving and investing both mean same. What is the difference between saving and investing? And if you could just throw some light on this so that people can understand, our listeners can understand the difference well, and they can actually do a right financial planning for themselves.
So, Amit, very importantly, as you rightly said, we Indians have, for centuries together, we have been savers. Yes. Because India doesn't have social security. So obviously, when we retire, we need wealth for ourselves to sustain our lifestyle. But as times are changing, our lifestyles are changing, our needs are changing, and our desires and aspirations are changing. And all of that needs, there is a cost to it, right? So the basic principle is saving, is basically you save into your bank account and keep it like a fixed deposit or anything. The most essential part is we all have to understand is your money has to grow above inflation to sustain your lifestyle, correct? The basic understanding saying that your money has to grow above inflation is something which we all need to learn, saying that only when you invest in, so which is that instrument which gives you that returns above inflation is equities. And the second important thing is we all have to remember that life expectancy in India has gone up. People live 85 and 90 years today on an average. After retirement, people survive for 30 years.
Yes.
So your wealth has to be there for the next, if a person is around 40 years, then he has to look at and say that this money has to sustain to me for the next 45, 50 years. That's the time horizon that we need to look at it.
Yes.
And one important caveat is women live longer than the men. And that's a proven, statistics world over saying that women live longer than the men. And there is a statistic saying that by the age of 65, 40% of the women are widowed and single. Vis-a-vis men are only 19%. So these are the statistics which are so blatantly available. So it is very essential for women to understand, to manage their own money also, and see that how they can financially be able to manage their wealth over a longer period of time.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving a good insight about it's never about equity mutual funds versus fixed income versus gold. You need to have a combination of all of it, which is right asset allocation. And you beautifully explained that risk is how you look at it. So equity is risky if in case your time horizon is like 1, 2, 3 years. But practically, you rightly explained as your time horizon increases, or very low risk in equity.
Absolutely.
Now, it sounds all simple, but if you could just also help our listeners understand what are the common mistakes or the big money mistakes, what generally people do in the entire journey. Is it because it sounds all simple that, have a combination of it, do a goal-based planning, but do you think people make a lot of mistakes in the entire journey?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think what happens is when it comes to investment, Amit, normally we come with a very shorter period of time. Okay. As human beings, we cannot visualize. We can't visualize for 10, 20, 15 years. What we think is saying that ki mujhe 1 saal ke baad kya chahiye, 2 saal ke baad kya chahiye. We don't go beyond that 2 to 3 years. But it is very essential today to see when it comes to investments, people think about returns, correct? Which funds gives the best return? It's like, people asking कि Maruti car कितना देती है, उसी तरह से अपना investment कितना देती है. That will not help you to create wealth.
Right.
Which fund gives you high return? What is important, very essential, is saying that, what is my goal? How much is the wealth which I will be requiring after 10, 20, 30 years? That amount of wealth is to be identified when you start investing your investment journey. And when you start that journey, how do you identify, is saying that, where am I today? What is the kind of income that I have? What is the kind of expenditure that I do? What do I owe because of my of my loans? And what is that excess money that I have? What is my household expense that I have? And over the next 15, 20, 30 years, because of inflation, what is the kind of expenses that I will need? And then you arrive at a figure and say that this is what is the amount of money that I would, corpus that I would need after 25, 30 years. If you identify that, then investment, where you have to invest becomes a vehicle.
Right.
You have different vehicles, but where you first is to identify,
yes,
what is the corpus. That's very important.
Yes.
It's like going on a holiday. You say,
Right.
I want to go on a holiday, and then you start saying that कि मैं plane में जाऊं, train में जाऊं. But पहले ये तो पता करो कि जाना कहाँ है.
Jana kidhar hai. Yes, without that, how do you plan? You're right. Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
First you identify a place, and then you will find vehicles saying that how do you travel. It's the same way with investments. And the
Right.
biggest mistakes that I have seen is saying that people invest in products and say, how much is the return? But that's not going to help you create wealth and sustain lifestyle or bring in
Yes.
financial security or financial independence. What is required is to identify how much do I need and when do I need.
Right. You're absolutely right, ma'am. But you know what? Let's say, I'm sure when the listener invests, okay, and they're putting their money in like an equity mutual fund to help create wealth. But the moment they invest and then they hear a lot of noise about the Russia-Ukraine thing and what's happening in the world and the noise of pessimism, do you think, how should investors behave? Because when you put your money and let's say for some reason, the market value goes down, how to keep your mind stable during these kind of times? Because it's hard-earned money. And when you see your hard-earned money going down, do you think it takes a toll, an emotional toll in a person's brain or the way in terms of how you look at money?
Oh, absolutely. So if you look at my experience only says that investment is all about emotions, right? Investment is never about returns. Investment is all about emotions.
Right.
So when emotional element comes into place, it's very essential saying that you need somebody to guide you, correct? And it just gives you need somebody, you need to take an help of a financial advisor or a mutual fund distributor and go and sit with them to understand, because he's the only person who can handhold you through these crises, correct? Because he's the one who understands that he has an experience for the last 20, 30 years, because he would have seen all of these cycles and everything. So you need somebody to handhold you through this journey, correct? Because the noise is always going to be there for the rest of the next 20, 30, 40 years, correct? And as human beings, as I said, we love to hear negative news rather than the positive news.
Right.
So that's a human nature. So what happens is, as the news keeps on coming, and there could be wars, there could be famine. And I think, Amit, what is there to say that just 2.5 years back, we were all locked down and a whole world was locked down in their homes, and everyone thought saying that it's end of the world, correct?
Right.
But imagine the human indigenous ability that we have. We have come out of it in 9 months. We had vaccinations coming to protect the mankind. I think we are, as evolving people, we have to look at the positive side of it and see that how do we take it forward. So I think the journey when you invest, because of these noises that keep on coming in, your goal is very important, because you are going to survive and retire. Sure. These noises can still play on, but the fact is saying that you are going to survive and you're going to retire and live a life by 70, 80, 90. Why are we not thinking about that, and rather than thinking about the noise? But I would advise every investor here on this webinar saying that please go and take assistance, please go and take help, because you definitely need that help to handhold you through this journey.
You rightly summed up that help is extremely important. And that's where a role of a mutual fund distributor or advisor is extremely important, because they try to understand you better than what you understand yourself. And managing emotions is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Now, a very interesting question, and I'm sure with your tons of experience, you can maybe give some insights on that. Do you think genetically or from emotions or from intellect, are men superior or women superior, or they're equal and gender doesn't make any difference? What is your experience been in terms of who are better in terms of managing money?
I don't think I have an specific answer to that, because every human being is very temperamental, correct? Temperament plays a lot of importance. So there is no difference between a man's temperament or a woman's temperament.
Right.
Okay. But genetically, women have been are much calmer and much adaptable to a lot of uncertainties. They can handle a lot of emotions. They have much more emotions than men, right? So what happens is when it comes to investments, my experience is they're very grounded, they're very stable. They don't want very high returns, but they want average returns to see that their money grows and they have that security. Right? So these are things which work, but there is nothing like that men have done well or women have done well. But to sum it up, I've got a lot of women clients who are there invested in my journey in the last 20 years. And I can only tell you, when I compare the women's portfolio has given more returns than the men portfolio, for the reason because the women don't take churn money. They're very fine. They only want reassurance every time when something they hear and the market goes out, and if you say that you are fine, their expectation of returns is also not as saying that they want 20% or 25% return. They're fine with around 10, 12, 15% return. So obviously they stay longer, and that's what I've seen. They're calmer, longer, and their portfolios do a little better. I'm sorry, I don't want to sound feminist, but the fact is that.
I'll give you a very interesting personal example. On my first date with my wife, I explained her all the principles of personal finance, and I told her about SIPs. And when I look at the portfolio, her portfolio and my portfolio, her portfolio has given better returns than mine, because she took my advice very seriously, and she's been continuing her SIP from last 15 years, and she keeps on increasing her SIP amount. And for some reason, that's the professional hazard. I see markets on a daily basis, and there have been periods when I've stopped my SIP. So you are right that I have a real example at my home that in spite of talking to so many investors, my portfolio returns are slightly lower than my wife's portfolio.
Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you could just talk from a personal finance perspective, that is the asset allocation mix for all of them should be similar, or how should one approach it at different life stages, like somebody's in their 20s or their 30s or 40s? How should one approach the idea of asset allocation at different stages of life? If you could just throw some light on this.
Sure. So there is no ballpark number as such. Again, I said it all depends upon your goal, correct? If somebody comes to me and at the age of 50 years, 45 or 50, and he has not saved anything for himself, and his goal with his lifestyle is around 10 to 15 years, and he has to create 10 crores of rupees, then obviously in spite of the fact that he's 45 or 50, his allocation to equity will be more, because if it doesn't invest there in equities, he won't be able to create wealth. So the percentages will change. It all depends with a lot of factors. What is your total savings today? How much have you saved? What is the asset allocation that you have today? And how much to reach the goal? How much is something that you need to save? That's important. So the asset allocation will be very specific, different to different people. Right. It will be different to because it will be as per their goals and the time period which is available.
Right.
Okay. So it's very, as we all have been talking, saying that if you start early,
yes,
saving, then obviously the kind of wealth that you create over the next 20-25 years is much easier for the reason because we talk about compounding, and compounding machine is the best way to create wealth over a period of time. And I think we have so many stories around today where compounding, that people have really created wealth by compounding, and compounding starts after 10 years. And after 10 years, when compounding starts, I think the machine of compounding is so fast as number of years keeps on growing. So saving early will always help you to save less and create more wealth. But you are in the middle of your journey on your retirement. Obviously, if you have not saved enough, then your whole asset allocation mix will change. You will have to save more in equities and then less, or you will have to work longer. Like there are a lot of cases where we have seen saying that we have to tell clients saying that you have not created wealth, you can't retire at the age of 58, you will have to work till 68 to actually see money in hand. So it all depends upon, so each one will have different asset allocation, each one will have as per their goals and the time period that they have.
Sounds perfect. Sounds great. Also, if you could just throw, I know it's a very, very basic question. The good part is that the entire country now today knows about SIP. But if you could just throw a little bit more light about what is SIP and why is it such a powerful tool? And also a little bit on the idea of compounding, because I know this topic of compounding was taught in class 5th maths. But for a layman investor who's hearing this word, which is like a jargon like compounding, if you could just throw some ideas in terms of how compounding works and how does wealth gets created over a period of time.
Sure. So what is SIP? Why somebody needs an SIP, right? If you go back, our parents used to do something called as a recurring deposit, right? And SIPs were not there. This was in the 80s. Yes. Why did they do that? Because they wanted money. They used to earn some money. So they used to put it in that recurring deposit. And they used to get some 11%, 12%. And at the end of so the recurring deposit used to be 1 year, or recurring deposit could be 2 years. And they would get an interest and they would save something to become a larger corpus, correct? So, but that used to be fixed deposits. Today, you have an option where your SIP, the money that you earn, right? All of us are not born wealthy. All of us are not born with so much of wealth around with us. So when we start earning, there is something called as SIP, because it saves a little amount of money so that we can plan our retirement. We can plan our short-term goals, like if I want to buy a car, if I want to buy a house, if I want to go on a holiday. This systematic investment plan helps you to plan yourself, save every month out of your salary, so that it helps to create wealth over a period of time. And the mutual fund industry has been one of the wonderful industry in the last 28 years. I've been seeing this journey from the nascent stage. And but what happens is today people look at SIPs that they should give returns in 5 years and 6 years. 5 years and 6 years will not give you returns. It has to be a compounding machine. Right. What is compounding machine is saying that if I invest 100 rupees, that 100 becomes 200 after 5 years or 6 years, correct? And after that, the next compounding will be that 100 becoming 200, 200 becoming 400. Then 400 becomes 800. But as time period, that period becomes shorter of that doubling, and the money keeps on compounding over a period of time. So, but you need to have patience. You really need to have the belief, and you really need to have experience.
So basically, you rightly said that the simple idea is invest and let your money grow. And if you grow only if you give time to your investment. So the magic principle or the magic pill over here is only time. Okay. Absolutely. Which is a very interesting thing. Okay. Now, this is a topic which is slightly away from investing, but related to money only. A lot of people might think, you know why? It's fine. I have to save. I have to invest. But we also know that saving and investing is extremely difficult because everybody else wants you to spend money. All ads want you to buy a new car or a home decor. And basically everybody is trying. And we live in the world of instant gratification. If you could just share from your experience, how do you create simple frameworks so that the idea of saving and investing gets inculcated because the temptations are there. And these are perpetual temptations because your friend is buying a new car or somebody is having an amazing home decor. How do you save and invest with so much temptations?
This is an absolutely amazing question, Amit, and I fight every day when I meet people. And the first reaction when I'm introduced somewhere, the first reaction for people is I don't have money, correct?
Yes.
And that's the first reaction. So I say, if you don't have money, you're going to die poor, correct? You're going to die poor. So it's a fact of reality that we need to bring in our conversation, and something which the discipline. You have to get into a disciplinary mode if you really want to see that how do you want to do well. Very simple, Amit, we all have done, right? When we were in school, when we were in school, we were always told saying that you need to have good grade numbers to go into an IIT or an engineering, or you want to do medical seats, or you want to go abroad and study, right? What all of us did was all of us put in efforts to see that what is that we wanted to do, correct? We had our own innate abilities and we pushed ourselves and say that, okay, so we did a planning of our careers, right?
Yes.
So why is it that we are not doing a planning of your money and our life?
Yes.
It's so essential saying that once we start earning, we forget about the journey that we did for the last 25 years, right? The efforts that we put in to choose our careers, what effort that we did, how did we reach our, dream jobs and the dream, degrees that we wanted.
Right.
But we don't do that with money. So it's very essential from the day that you start earning money. So very importantly, I wanted to say that discipline becomes very important. So as I said, if you start saving early,
right,
and you have the time period, then, even if you save only 20% for the next 30 years, right, and the balance 80, if you keep on spending for whatever you want, yes, I think you will reach your goal. But right, it's a discipline, correct? Yes. Everything has to be disciplinedly done, as instant gratification is going to kill you. You right, are going to get into a debt trap, and that trap is going to really leave you with very miserable kind of a situation. Yes. You will be depressed at some point of time. Yes. So it's very important saying that you need patience and you really need somebody to guide you. So again, you need somebody to guide you to see that how do you not do those mistakes.
Right. And I'll talk about now a second extreme. Okay. One is that there's some set of people who can't save, and there is another set of people who have money, but they come from an era of scarcity and they don't know how to enjoy the money also. Do you also meet those kind of clients who are not able to, they don't know how to enjoy with that money?
So many. So many. So I think in the last 20 years, I've seen a lot of people, and especially people whom I met when they were in the 50s and 40s and all. Today they are at 80 years and 70 years in the last journey. So spending was never their priority, they can't fathom themselves that they are rich, right, that they have enough. Yes. So I have to keep on reassuring them, saying that you have more than enough. And I actually sometimes put my foot down, saying that if you're not going to spend, then let me not waste my time on you to create that wealth. Correct?
Right.
Why should I create wealth when you don't want to spend? So then that whole conversation becomes different to make them realize, saying that you have enough to spend and you can really enjoy your life now. You can actually travel from an economy to a business class. Okay. And it just, that whole narrative changes. So yes, there are a lot of people there also who don't want to spend, or they feel they're still in that scarcity mentality that you don't have enough. So obviously that whole conversation changes, evolves over a period of time, and it keeps on changing.
Yes, perfectly. You rightly said, because it's not just about the entire link of geometry of wealth has to be fine. You have to save money, you have to plan well, you have to invest wisely. And then at the same time, you have to also know the art of spending it well, because what's the advantage of just having money but not able to enjoy it? Yeah. Thanks, ma'am, for all your wisdom and all the information, sharing your decades of experience. We have got so many questions from the participants, from the listeners, and we will try to answer take few of the interesting questions which people have asked over here.
Yeah.
So there is a very interesting question from Sukumar. And the question is, what is the best fund and what's the best time horizon for an SIP?
So I think we go back to the thing saying that what is the best fund?
Yeah.
Right. Now, if you look at the history, I think each fund, there are different categories, right? You have a large cap, you have a mid cap, you have a small cap, correct?
Right.
And each fund will go through a cycle of underperformance every 4 to 5 years.
Yes.
It's because of the style, because of the environment, because of the cyclical nature of the environment of interest rate, inflation, commodity prices. So every fund will go through because every fund manager has a style
Yes.
of investing, which is a value style, growth style, momentum style. We need to understand. So even when you do an SIP, do an asset allocation between large, mid, small, and stick to that allocation. The time horizon, which the gentleman talks about, saying that what is the time period, I would put that the time period is till the time you reach your goal.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
Your time period has to be till the time you reach your goal, because that is the time period when you redeem your money. You redeem your money when you have reached your goal and when you have that purpose that it has served it.
Right. So thanks for explaining it very logically. In fact, people talk about time horizon. It's so logical that as long as you're earning and if you've not achieved your goal, keep on doing your SIP, and that's a very logical way of doing it. And obviously, you explained it very nicely that how there are different categories and styles of fund managers and why diversifying across categories and styles becomes so important. A very interesting question from Bhavna. And in fact, I think she wants to take real charge of her money. She's 43. She has got 2 children and she wants to secure her life for old age. And which is a very interesting question, that for her, retirement is the most important thing. What ideas or what thoughts you want to suggest, or how can you help her with limited amount of information?
So Bhavna, it's so interesting. So I'm so happy for you at the age of 43. You really put your foot down and say that now you want to be financially independent. And I think that day is a defining moment for you. And if you have decided, it's very simple. What you need to do is you have to sit across and say, what's the money that you have? What's the expenses that you're doing? What the money that you owe and what is left? That's one way of looking at it, saying that how do I start investing? Second way of looking at it is saying that put a bucket and say that how much do you need for what is your household expense? Sit with someone to understand, saying that what is the expenses going to be after 10, 15, 20 years, and start working backwards and say that how much you need to save to reach your goal of that retirement corpus. Is as simple, saying that you need to bucket your expenses, bucket your income, bucket what you owe out, and put a plan so that you make a roadmap to reach your goal.
You're right. Absolutely right. There's a lot of questions. I don't want to name one person, but there are a lot of investors who have asked about the idea that what is financial freedom, because this word is being used many times in our conversation. What does freedom means basically? What is financial freedom in a very simple terms? I know it's not simple, but
it's a very complex word. It's different for different people, but from what I have understood is, I think financial security is all about liberating and empowering ourselves.
Right.
Financial security brings in confidence in us, and it also gives you to live life the way you want to. Correct? It gives you the freedom to live life the way you want to. When you have that particular income which comes every month, when you retire, when you dream about what you want to do, because if you look at any human being's life cycle, the first till the age of 50, 55, initially when you start, it's your family, it's your children, you spend a lot of time, and then it comes to a time when your retirement comes. And once the retirement comes, all of these years, then you have not done what hobbies that you have, what you aspired all your life, correct? So that aspiration and desire of your hobbies will only come when you have the financial security to enjoy your life. So financial independence is about getting that liberty, that empowerment, and to get that confidence, saying that I have enough to live and I can enjoy my life. I want to do what I want to do.
Right. A very interesting question from Shobha, because in our industry, we use these adjectives very commonly, like short term and long term, and nobody defines what is short term and what is long term. If you could just explain when you talk to your clients, what is long term and what is short term, and how do you look at those adjectives?
Yeah. So it's very simple. I will just relate to our needs, right?
Yeah.
Right. So when we start our life cycle, we have a first, when we get married and when we start living with our spouses, the first thing that comes to our mind is saying that we want to buy a house.
Yes.
Correct? That's a common thing across all of us, right? So what we do is that's your short-term goal, correct? Which is saying that 5 years down the line, I want to buy a house, or 2 years down the line, I want to buy a house. Total short-term needs, right? Buying a house, buying a car, going on a holiday. These are all short-term needs that you have. What is the long-term need? Is your retirement? Is your child's education? Correct? These are all your long-term goals that will happen. Like your retirement goals would be after 20, 30 years. Your children's education will be after 15, 16, 17 years. So all of those investments will relate to the kind of goals that you have and those expenses that you have, correct? Like, for example, if it is contingency expense, because what the pandemic taught us was saying that it becomes a very important element for all of us to save as a contingency money,
yes,
which could be a 6-month salary. That's what we say, that you should hold a 6 months household expense or that you should save. But there are people who feel insecure and say that, no, I need for 12 months.
Yes.
It's up to the individual. Do you want the contingency money for 6 months or 9 months or 12 months? Now that becomes a short-term need.
Right.
Correct? Because you can dip into it in case of any crisis.
Yes.
So those short-term, long-term needs will be as per your goals and desires.
Right. Absolutely. Which is right. It's basically, it comes down to your goals, and there is no exact definition for it.
Absolutely. Like, for example, as I said, somebody would like to buy a house after 5 years. So that's also a short-term goal.
Yes.
Right? Somebody would like to buy it after 2 years. But what is a long-term goal? Is retirement.
Yes.
Is children's education. Those are all long-term goals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A very interesting question, and I'm sure you hear this question on a daily basis. Jinal has asked a very interesting question that she's been doing an SIP from last 5 years, which is an amazing thing. And her fund has given approximately 100% return. Should I redeem and book profits, or I should wait for the fund to give me 200% for the next 5 years?
So the purpose that you first go back and think, saying that what was the purpose that you started saving this money, correct? If you relate that purpose to these returns, then you will never redeem this money. If this purpose was saying that you wanted a certain purpose to have certain goals, then you don't need to see the returns. If the money has accumulated, you can redeem. But if you don't have a purpose, now you define the purpose and say that why do you want to save this? Is it that you want to buy a house after 10 years, or this is for retirement? Because the answer will be subjected to the purpose. So she needs to find the purpose. The purpose should not be on returns. The purpose should be on her goals.
Yes, absolutely. But when you have temptations like this, when your fund gives you returns or when your funds are negative, ideally, you rightly summed it that you should not stop it. But there is still an idea of profit booking. Do you experience that clients just want to book profit here and there in between? Is it a good idea, or you just allow your money to grow?
So, Amit, I have never timed the market. I've never been able to time the market. I've never been able to understand saying that what is the right time to book profit or right time to enter the market.
Right.
Again, I've always related every investment to a goal, correct? So once I relate that to a goal, then returns becomes a part of it, but more concentration has to be on your goal rather than the returns, because there could be times saying that because she has been getting this 100% return because she was in a period in the last 2 years where the market went up, correct? And maybe in the next 2-3 years, the market might not go as much as that much. But look at the beauty saying that if her money starts compounding, in the next 5-10 years, this money might become 500 times, or this
Yes.
money can become 300 times. So the opportunity for her to compound is going to be much faster for her, because she got that acceleration when she invested in the first 5 years. So that acceleration that she has got, which will benefit her over a longer period of time. But again, I'm just saying that if there is a goal, she has to define a goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So basically, it all boils down to your goal-based planning. If your goal is like 15 years, and in the journey, if your fund has given positive or negative or no return, ideally you should stay to your goal, because it's all about a goal-based planning and not tenure-based planning.
Absolutely.
And a very interesting question from Dipali, she's saying that, you know what, and I'm sure listening to you, she must have got some understanding of equity and equity mutual funds now. Her question was that I'm not much aware about stock markets and mutual funds. My portfolio is handled by my husband. Can I be in such a position where I can handle my portfolio independently?
And I think absolutely that she can handle her portfolio if she understands, saying that her investments are in equity mutual funds and it is managed by her spouse. I am 100% sure saying that if she takes it over, she will be able to handle that very beautifully. It's no rocket science. It is simple, basic understanding. She can sit with somebody and understand, and she can absolutely handle it on her own.
Absolutely. There are also certain people who have been asking about the idea of doing it directly or using a mutual fund distributor or an advisor. What has your experience been? And typically, if you could just give some suggestions and thoughts to these investors.
So Amit, I think what it's basically going direct option is for people who understand what that exact mutual fund is all about, or that financial product is all about, right? So if a person understands it very well, he might as well go direct, and he could take that path and you could do investments. But as I said, if you go through someone, okay, it could be a mutual fund distributor or a financial advisor. I think what helps you is saying that journey of your financial journey is something that helps you to create wealth over a longer period of time, because you definitely need somebody on the other side to handhold you, because there are 3 things which happen during the life cycle of your investments. You have your personal emotions that happen in your life, because there are some unfortunate circumstances comes, and then you have situations. You have a situation where the economy goes through a cycle where there is an issue, and you have like a war or some calamities that happen. So these are situations. So everything, it is all about emotions. How do you handle? So as I said, investment is all about emotions and not returns. It is very, very essential saying that if you have somebody to handhold you, I think you should take that help. But if you think you are capable enough, you're qualified and capable enough to handle, absolutely you can handle your money through a direct move.
Right. Thanks for the elaborate, interesting answer. I think most of the questions are in the similar lines.
Amit, I just want to add one more thing on this direct and this thing.
Yes.
You know, if you look at ourselves, if you have a fever, if you have a headache, and if you have a cold, correct? You will just go to a medical store and buy a paracetamol and have it, or you will have a cough syrup and have it, right? Anything becomes a little more complicated. You need a doctor, right? You need the medical consultation to help you. It's the same with finance. Till a certain amount of wealth, you will be able to handle it. The moment the wealth becomes a larger size, you will require some experts to handle that money, because there are so many options, so many vehicles available to invest, to understand and manage it. Initially, it is all fun and you can do it, but the moment your wealth becomes a larger size, you will require somebody to manage it.
Absolutely. I want this. This is a very interesting question, and I'm sure you will love to give this answer for this. Palvi is asking a question that which is it a good time to invest? That's the first question. Which sector or a stock looks good to invest at this time, and she wants a multi-bagger stock. So if in case you could just throw the obsession of people towards multi-baggers and finding the best sector, and the idea of, is it the best time to invest? Some thoughts on that.
So again, Amit, I will go back and say that what is your goal of investment? Okay.
Right.
That is always a good time to invest. It's always a good time to invest, correct? When you have a goal of 15, 20 years or 5 years or 6 years, it's always a good time to invest.
Absolutely.
There will never be a time, because the reality is you will need wealth, money over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years for your aspirations and goal.
Yes.
So it is always, it's very difficult for me to answer. I will always say it's the right time to invest. I've never said in the last 20, 30 years, this is not the right time to invest. Again, it's goal-based. It's your time period.
Right.
Second, there is nothing called as multi-bagger. I don't understand it. I don't know what is multi-bagger, and I've never been able to do it but over a period of time, wealth gets generated. Sectors again, I think if she is very young and she's only investing, investing is again risky. So it is always better to do an asset allocation and be prepared for, in the sense, large cap, mid cap, small cap, rather than just sector bias. The moment you go into sector bias, then obviously the volatility in a sector bias mutual fund is quite high. So it's advisable to have a very portfolio constructed as with an asset allocation.
Sounds
and
perfect.
That's the reason why that caveat is saying that mutual fund investments are
subject to market risk,
because of the questions that come in saying that, can I have a multi-bagger? Can I have a sectoral fund? It is for these kind of investors that caveat works very well.
Actually, mutual funds have been multi-baggers, like how you explained that how the NAVs have grown over the last 20 years. Mutual funds can be multi-baggers. Instead of finding multi-baggers in stocks, I think a diversified mutual funds can be possibly a good multi-bagger.
Oh, yeah.
We're coming full circle. Again, a question from Rajni. A safest investment for housewife. I know you have answered it completely, but again, I'm coming back to the same question. Safest investment. If you could just explain what is safest and how you can just sum it up. So basically, all the discussions what we have, I think it can be summed with this question.
I think there is nothing safe. Okay. Life is uncertain. Life is unsafe. Correct? So there is nothing safe for any investment. Correct? I think more importantly, what we need to realize is saying that if I don't invest, am I going to sustain my lifestyle? Will I be able to have enough money to sustain? That's the biggest question that we need to ask, rather than saying that, what is the safest investment? It is about, I could give you the safest investment, which could be a fixed deposit, or which could be, just keeping it in the savings bank account. But that's not going to give you safety. That's not going to sustain your lifestyle. That's not going to give you financial security. That's not going to give you financial independence.
Yes.
So that question itself, we need to redefine and say that, how do we effectively invest well so that we are able to sustain our lifestyle? Absolutely.
Because what seems safe right now, in 20 years, that might seem risky, because FD is safe now, but 20 years you will feel, oh, that's so risky. The money has not grown. And you rightly explained that it will not be able to beat inflation. So it becomes risky.
So every housewife will be able to relate to this, Amit, that you have a 2,000 rupees note, right? Correct?
Yes.
That 2,000 rupees note, today what I go into a shop and buy, after 3 months, that 2,000 rupees will not be able to buy the same thing what I bought 3 months ago. Correct? So your purchasing power is actually reducing. Correct? Your purchasing power is reducing every day. So it's very essential saying that your purchasing power, which is your money, has to appreciate about that inflation to sustain your purchasing power.
Absolutely. I'll just end up with the last question. Smita has asked this question, and I think we didn't talk about it, but I think it's very critical. Her question is, how important is life insurance for a working woman, or any woman in general?
So life insurance for any human being is very important. Okay, every person, man, woman, life insurance is very essential part of it because it secures the family from disasters for the future sustainability of life, right? Why somebody takes an insurance saying that if something happens to me, is my family protected to take care of their financial needs and ability, because they are going to survive and live for the next 20, 30 years, correct? So if something happens to me, that insurance wealth which comes to my family, will it take care of the financial security of the other person's survival? So if you are a housewife, or even if you are a working woman, it becomes very essential saying that you need to insure yourself to protect your spouse and your children.
Yes.
Correct? Because when we start a life journey, we look at a life journey saying that both the spouses are going to be living together. Yes. And they are going to earn, and they have a desire and a goal to educate their children, buy a house, and all of those. And if one of the spouse, something unfortunate happens, the other spouse still has to live his or her life, so that, take care of your children's, those need of buying a house to the need of retirement still remains, correct? Right. So the insurance bit only helps you with that finance to support your life to carry on.
Right. So the last question, it's not there, it's part of the question, but it's just a thought which came to my mind. For a woman who is a homemaker and she's not earning money, do you think should she also be aware about the ideas of personal finance? Because in this case, maybe the husband is earning and he's investing. Should she also be like a co-pilot, and should she be involved in the entire discussion of personal finance and wealth management?
Amit, this is a very, very critical question that you asked, and it's so important. Okay, I think the pandemic, brought in a lot of reality of life in the last 2.5 years, correct? When the pandemic started, there was no age bar for people to lose their lives, correct? I know a lot of women, when the spouses passed away because they went to the hospital and they never returned back, a lot of spouses were not even aware saying that what was the password in the bank accounts. They didn't even know the husband's HR, company's HR head's number, correct? So there were so many things. So it's very essential saying that it could be a housewife, it could be a working woman, to have a hands-on details about the family's investment, the family's passwords, the family's where the money is lying, where are those properties, where are those property papers. And I think it is the need of the hour to be hands-on on it. I think the pandemic, which just happened around 2.5 years ago, is a reality, and it has stuck us all with lightning. And that is something which is very essential that every woman to take cognizance of. She has to take that into her hands to have the details about the family wealth. And that's one thing. Secondly, also to ensure saying that the wills are made by the spouses, yes, because will becomes a very, very important part of our journey. I can just give you a very simple example saying that if a man is there and the man's mother is alive and the wife is also there, and if the will is not made, the actually assets get equally distributed between the mother and the wife. And a lot of people aren't even aware of it, So what happens is it just lightning, like a thunderbolt, it comes and hits you at one point of time. So it's very important that your spouses have to make wills. It's very important to ensure saying that what are the passwords of your bank account, your locker. And today, everything has a password, including your payment gateways, through your electricity bills, telephone bills, your household expenses that you do. So it's very essential to note down all your passwords, to note down all your utility details also, your investment passwords, your bank passwords, your mutual funds, your demat accounts. So I think it's the time of the hour to hand and take charge of it.
Absolutely. You have summed it so well that at the end of the day, whether you are working, you're not working, you're earning, you're not earning, women have to take charge of the money. They have to get the insurance in place, the will in place, and be a co-pilot, because even men, maybe they're managing money, but at the same time, there are times they can go wrong. Be a good emotional support in terms of managing money.
Amit, one more thing I want to add here is saying that, so that my experience has been saying that people take a lot of home loans, right?
Yes.
In the home loans, there are no insurance cover which is being taken.
Yes.
Okay, a lot of people who have transferred their loans from one bank to the other bank, they do it only because of the interest rate differential and all, but they don't insure, saying that there is an insurance cover to that home loan. Yes. And I have seen so many people not taking it, and they've lost their spouses, and the whole burden comes on them to take care of the family, to also the burden on the EMI that comes on the household. So it is very essential, saying that you have to ensure, saying that you have a term loan on your home loans or your personal loans, your home loans, so that it secures your family.
Perfect, ma'am. I think you've answered almost all the questions. Thanks for your valuable time. Thanks for sharing your 3 decades of experience in such a simple language. I'm sure your listeners would have got amazing insights from the conversation, and they will soon contact and find a good woman advisor and try to make their life towards financial success, because money is a very interesting subject. It brings a lot of stress, but with good advice, I'm sure the stress will definitely come down. Thanks for giving us this valuable time. And thanks, listeners and participants, for attending this session. And I hope this session was useful and fruitful for all of you. Thank you. Happy investing.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you. And I wish all the viewers the 75th Independence Day. And I think hopefully that we change our whole narrative and say that every person on this in India becomes financially independent and financially secure.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.